The fire had already been burning for several minutes. No one ran for water. No one shouted for help. The entire village simply watched. In the middle of the flames stood a man named Tunde. Beside him, his wife held their frightened daughter close. The little girl looked at the crowd. Then she asked, "Daddy, did we do something bad?" Tunde looked at every familiar face around him. The men he had worked beside. The women who had shared meals with his family. The elders who had blessed his marriage. Not one of them met his eyes. He knelt beside his daughter, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, and quietly replied, "No, but tonight, they believe we did." The roof collapsed behind them. A cloud of sparks rose into the night sky. Still, nobody moved. Tunde picked up the small sack that held everything the fire had spared. He reached for his daughter's hand. Then, without looking back once, he walked away. Welcome to quiet truths. 3 days earlier, if you had walked into Oke Abon that morning, you would have believed happiness lived there. The harvest festival was only a few days away. Children chased one another through dusty footpaths. Women laughed as they prepared food for the celebration. The sound of drums echoed beneath the old Iroko tree. Even the air seemed lighter. At the edge of the village, a different rhythm could be heard. Tap, tap, tap. It came from a small wooden workshop where Tunde sat carving a beautiful door. He was the village carpenter. If a roof collapsed, people called Tunde. If a chair broke, people called Tunde. If a family needed a new front door, they called Tunde. His daughter Ayo sat nearby gathering the curled wood shavings into a basket. She watched him carefully before asking, "Daddy, how do you know when a door is finished?" Tunde smiled without looking up. "You don't finish a door by looking at it." She frowned. "Then how?" He ran his hand across the smooth wood. "You finish it when you trust it to protect your own family." Ayo smiled proudly. She didn't fully understand his answer, but she loved hearing him speak. A few moments later, footsteps approached the workshop. It was Chief Bamidele. "Tunde," he called. "The village bell will ring soon. Everyone is being asked to gather in the square." Tunde brushed the sawdust from his hands. "Has something happened?" The chief hesitated. "I'm afraid so." For the first time that morning, the smile disappeared from his face, and without realizing it, the happiest day the village had expected quietly began to disappear. The village bell rang 3 times. Its sound echoed across every path in Oke Admon. Men left their farms. Women stepped away from their cooking fires. Children stopped their games and followed their parents toward the village square. No one could remember the last time everyone had been summoned without warning. Something was wrong. By the time Tunde arrived with Ayo resting on his shoulders, nearly the entire village had gathered. Chief Bamidele stood before them. Usually, he greeted everyone with a smile. Today, his face carried a weight no one had ever seen before. He took a slow breath. For many months, he began. Every family in this village has sacrificed something. Some gave money, some gave food, some gave their labor. Together, we raised enough to repair our community hall and build a new well before the harvest festival. The crowd nodded. Everyone had contributed. Even the poorest families had found a way. Then the chief lowered his eyes. "When I opened the storehouse this morning, the community fund was gone. Silence, not a whisper, not a cough, only silence. An elderly woman finally spoke. Are you certain? Chief Bamidele nodded slowly. Counted it myself yesterday evening. Another elder frowned. Was the door broken? No. Were the locks? No murmurs began. If nobody broke in, then someone with access must have entered. A younger man folded his arms, so the money never left the village. Another voice answered, which means one of us knows where it is. For the first time that morning, neighbors stopped looking at the chief and started looking at one another. No names were mentioned. No accusations were made. But something invisible had entered the village. Trust had quietly begun to disappear. The meeting ended without answers. People returned home. But the conversations did not end. They simply became quieter. That afternoon, Tunde returned to his workshop. He picked up his chisel and tried to continue carving the community hall door. Tap. Tap. His hand slipped. A small cut appeared where the design should have been. He stared at it for a moment, then gently placed the tools back on the bench. Just then, an old hunter named Baba Karim stopped outside. He watched Tunde silently before speaking. You were at the chief's compound yesterday. It wasn't a question. Tunde nodded. I repaired one of his windows. The old man leaned on his walking stick. What time did you leave? Tunde thought for a moment. I'm not sure. It was almost dark. Baba Karim nodded. Time to the wedding. Neither of them noticed the young palm wine seller arranging his bottles nearby. He had. My husband says Tunde was there just before nightfall. Before long, another villager confidently declared, everyone knows Tunde was near the chief's place before the money disappeared. No one lied. No one invented a story. Each person simply added a little more certainty than the last. And by sunset, being near the compound had quietly begun to sound like being responsible for what happened there. The next morning, Chief Bamidele called another meeting. His voice was calm. No one has been accused, and no one will be, but until we know what happened. Every house in this village will be searched. He paused. My house will be searched first. The elders searched every room, every cupboard, every wooden chest. Nothing. Then, they searched the homes beside his. Still nothing. The search continued, moving slowly from one family to the next. With every house that revealed nothing, the circle of suspicion grew smaller. Eventually, the search party turned toward the narrow path leading to Tunde's workshop. No one spoke, but everyone followed. The search party stopped outside Tunde's home. Chief Bamidele stepped forward. Tunde, his voice was quieter than before. May we search your house? Tunde looked around. Some of the faces before him had watched him grow from a boy into a man. Others had eaten at his table. He slowly stepped aside. If it helps find the truth. Come in. The elders entered first. Then 2 young men. Then several others. Cupboards were opened. Sleeping mats were lifted. Clay pots were emptied. Wooden chests were searched one by one. Ayo stood quietly beside her mother, clutching the rag doll she carried everywhere. She watched a woman open the small box where she kept her seashells and smooth stones. The woman looked inside, then closed it again. Ayo frowned. Mama, why are they touching my things? Her mother forced a smile. They're only looking for something. Ayo looked around the room, then whispered, but we didn't lose anything. The words hung in the air. No one answered. Outside, the crowd waited in silence. Minutes passed. Nothing. Then, one of the younger men walked toward the fence behind Tunde's workshop. He suddenly bent down. Wait! Everyone turned. Half buried beneath loose soil was a worn leather pouch. The young man brushed away the dirt. Chief Bamidele's face changed immediately. I know that pouch. It belonged to the community fund. A murmur swept through the crowd. Someone whispered, it was hidden behind his workshop. Another answered, why would it be there if he knew nothing? Tunde stared at the pouch. I've never seen it before. His words disappeared beneath the growing whispers. One elder carefully opened it. Inside, there was no money, only folded papers. No one looked closely. The pouch alone was enough. One man shook his head. I think we've seen enough. Another replied, so do I. For the first time, Tunde realized the search was no longer about finding the truth. It had become about confirming what people already believed. He took a step toward the elders. I repaired the chief's window yesterday. Anyone could have left that there after I returned home. An older villager sighed. Tunde, do you hear yourself? The question wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was disappointed. The crowd had already stopped asking, could he be innocent? They had begun asking, why won't he admit it? Fear spread faster than reason. Someone shouted from the back, a thief cannot live among us. Another voice answered, he has shamed the whole village. An angry young man grabbed one of Tunde's unfinished chairs and threw it into the road. Another kicked over a stack of carefully cut timber. Wood scattered across the ground. Tunde built this village. One elder said quietly. Enough, another shouted. But the crowd was no longer listening. A burning torch slipped from someone's hand. Whether it was dropped or thrown, no one could later agree. The dry wood caught almost instantly. Flames climbed the side of the workshop. Someone screamed for water. Others stood frozen. Within moments, the fire had reached the roof. Tunde didn't run inside. He knew there was nothing left to save. Ayo buried her face against her mother's dress. The wooden door Tunde had spent days carving for the community hall cracked beneath the heat, then disappeared into the flames. The village watched in silence. No one had planned to burn a man's home. But somehow, they all stood there while it happened. Before sunrise, Tunde placed the few tools the fire had spared into a worn sack. His wife carried a basket of clothes. Ayo held her rag doll, now stained with ash. She looked back one last time. Daddy, our house is gone. Tunde looked at the smoking ruins, then gently squeezed her hand. A house can burn. He looked at her. But don't let this place burn your heart too. Without another word, they walked away. Not one person stopped them. Not one person asked them to stay. By the time the morning sun rose over Okeabon, the village had lost one of its own. It simply didn't know it yet. Weeks passed. Then months. The harvest festival came and went. The new community hall remained unfinished. The beautiful wooden door Tunde had been carving had turned to ash with everything else. Life slowly returned to Okeabon. Or at least, that was what everyone wanted to believe. One quiet afternoon, the village elders gathered inside the half-finished community hall. They had decided to complete the work Tunde never had the chance to finish. As laborers cleared away old tools and unused timber, a young apprentice lifted Tunde's abandoned workbench. Something wrapped in faded cloth fell onto the floor. An elder picked it up. Inside were neatly folded documents, receipts, payment records, official letters. The room fell silent as they read them one by one. Finally, one elder frowned. This can't be right. Another reached for the papers. His hands began to tremble. The community fund had never been inside the village storehouse on the night. Everyone believed it had been stolen. It had been officially transferred days earlier to pay the regional contractor responsible for digging the new well. Every payment had been recorded, every signature matched. Nothing had been stolen. For several moments, no one spoke. The silence felt heavier than the fire had. Chief Bamidele slowly sat down. His face drained of color. Then, almost in a whisper, he said, "The pouch." Everyone looked at him. I recognized the leather pouch, and because I recognized it, I believed it belonged to the missing money. Another elder lowered his head. I never looked inside. A third quietly added, "I didn't either." One by one, they realized the same terrible truth. No one had verified anything. They had recognized, assumed, believed, judged, and acted. The truth had been there all along, but nobody had stopped long enough to ask one more question. That evening, no announcement was made. No village meeting was called. Instead, every elder, every family, every neighbor who had stood silently on the night of the fire began the same journey. Together, they traveled to a neighboring town where they had heard Tunde had settled. They found him exactly where someone said he would be, inside a small workshop, carving another wooden door. The steady rhythm echoed through the room. Tap, tap, tap. Tunde looked up. He recognized every face. No one knew how to begin. At last, Chief Bamidele stepped forward. His voice shook. "Tunde, we were wrong." The workshop became silent. Tunde looked down at the unfinished door. He gently brushed the sawdust from its surface, then continued carving. Tap, 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 tap. Finally he spoke. "Wood teaches patience." The villagers listened. "If you rush it, it cracks." He looked up, and people aren't very different. Tears filled the chief's eyes. "We came to ask your forgiveness." Tunde was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked outside. Ayo was playing beneath the mango tree. She was laughing. For the first time in months, she sounded like a child again. A small smile crossed his face. "I forgave you long ago." Relief spread across the villagers' faces, but it lasted only a moment. Tunde continued. "It wasn't forgiveness you needed. It was patience." No one answered, because no answer could rebuild the home they had watched burn, or erase the fear in a little girl's eyes as she asked why no one came to help. The villagers returned home before sunset. The road was the same. The trees were the same. The village looked exactly as it always had. But the people who walked back were not. Most lies are easy to recognize. The dangerous ones are the lies we create ourselves by mistaking assumptions for facts. Sometimes, the greatest injustice is not committed by cruel people. It is committed by ordinary people who become certain before they become curious. The quiet truth is this: before you decide someone is guilty, make sure you've questioned your certainty as much as you've questioned them. Because the truth has never been afraid of questions. Only assumptions are. If this story made you think differently about the way we judge others, tell us in the comments. And if you enjoy stories that explore human nature, hidden motives, and life's quiet truths, subscribe to Quiet Truth. Until next time, stay curious.